Hello, everyone, and welcome to Zelda Speedrun's main. Tonight we've got another Breath of the Wild not any percent, Old Dungeons Tournament 2023 Group C here between CrazyAZ and Glan. I'm Star. Our commentator tonight is Newborn Insulted. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you, Star?
Not doing too bad. Should be a good race here, and I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, this should be a good race. We've got two runners here. CrazyAZ has been around Breath of the Wild for quite some time now. I think at least as long as I have been around, which is going back to 2020. And then Glan has been, I think, popped in and out of the community a little bit in terms of being an active runner, but I know that he runs a variety of other games as well, including A Link to the Past. Yeah, I'm excited to see what these runners have for us this evening. Hopefully, we can get things underway and get the action going here for you. My understanding is, and I guess we'll see if this is correct or not as we get into the run, but having watched these two a little bit do PB attempts and do tourney practice and stuff like that, my understanding is that both of them do the fastest route, which is the route that skips the Great Plateau Tower. This is an all dungeons run, and most runs other than any percent that leave plateau and do outside of plateau objectives end up getting the tower, because the tower is what allows you to fast travel between shrines and towers and things like that as you unlock further and further into the game. But one of the cool things about all dungeons is that at least in the world record route, you can do all of that without unlocking the tower. Because curiously, the Sheikah Slate still allows you to teleport to Divine Beasts, even if you haven't unlocked the tower. And so what fast travel you'll see our runners doing is just using the Sheikah Slate in a couple of cases to warp to Divine Beasts once they're finished. Those tend to be in high up perched locations that are pretty advantageous for travel. And so the benefit of skipping the tower is that the tower cutscene is a little bit long. It costs somewhere in the range of about a minute and a half of cutscenes and mashing and stuff like that. So my suspicion is we'll see both of these individuals running the towerless route, but again, we'll have to get into it and see here. The run typically is in the hour and a half to 2 hours range, depending on skill level. Glan has got his split up on screen, so you can see his PB is in the 151s. And I think Crazy is in the low 140s, maybe a 142 if I'm not mistaken. Fortunately, though, because of the way this tournament is set up, both of these runners will move on to the next round. Oh, perhaps you can't see the splits on Restream. Fair enough. So yeah, I get the luxury of seeing his splits, and I can see that he's at about a 150-134. One thing to note, though, in terms of time, is that Breath of the Wild's leaderboard timing begins on gaining control of Link, as opposed to beginning from selecting the new game option from the home screen. And with the opening cutscene in the middle there, that costs, or it takes about a minute and 8 seconds. And so with race timing, we start from new game just to make sure it's consistent and fair and even. You're seeing our runners jump immediately into tricks and glitches. If you know Breath of the Wild at all, you know the glitches start basically right from the beginning. Both of our runners grabbed the Sheikah Slate and then hopped up and wedged themselves into a corner of the wall and used the Sheikah Slate's scope feature to clip through the wall into the out-of-bounds area. They then climbed up the cliff that's there and just uncrouched to get back in bounds, clipping through the floor essentially from beneath. And that allows them to skip somewhere in the range of 2 to 2.5 minutes of opening cutscenes. It also locks time of day, so that we never have to deal with rain other than hard-coded rain in places like Zara's Domain or other unfortunate weather circumstances. You can see both of them following basically the same route here as they go to a Boko camp. They're collecting a little bit of backup food. They're collecting a Boko spear and a shield. Those are both necessary items, those two pieces of equipment there. And they're going to use their shields to bonk against a sloped part of the wall on Temple of Time and shield clip through. Shield clipping in this game is made possible through a mechanic called skew, which is where Link bonks his shield against a sloped surface. The game, for whatever reason, stores the angle at which he bonked. And through walls that are at least thin enough, you can with skew in the right direction, you can shield jump and unequip your shield. And as Link snaps back from his skew angle, you can clip right through the wall. Seeing Crazy having a little bit of difficulties with the Bokoblin there. Glan opted just to run away and go to a slightly slower BLS step-up spot. We'll talk more about BLS here in a minute. There's a lot that happens in the first 5 minutes of this run. But BLSS and wind bombs are the two major movement mechanics that you'll see throughout the run here. Both of our runners heading to the Bombs Shrine first. With the way the route is set up, Bombs is by far the most useful and advantageous rune that they're going to get of the 4 runes that are available, that are kind of represent Link's abilities in this game. And so having Bombs allows for easy BLSS slides, or BLS slides, BLSSs, and also for wind bombs, which you'll see here in just a moment. Those of you familiar with the game will know the Great Plateau is kind of the tutorial introductory section. We're looking to wrap up with the plateau by finishing the 4 shrines and gaining the paraglider in 15 or 16 minutes, hopefully. Actually, it'll be a little bit later on the timer since we started timer from new game instead of from gaining control. So it'll probably be 17, 18 minutes for these 2 runners. Both of our runners having a little bit of an unfortunate time with this initial wind bomb. I think wind bombs are pretty well known even to people who just kind of loosely follow Breath of the Wild speedrunning at this point. But the idea behind it is we launch Link into bullet time. As we launch him, we drop a bomb behind him before going into bullet time. After gaining bullet time, we drop the second bomb and then blow up the first bomb in such a way that it propels the second bomb into Link's collision model and yeets him forward at high speeds. On the Great Plateau, these are useful but risky because we don't have the paraglider. Once we gain the paraglider, they become incredibly useful as a means of quick overworld travel, both for distance and for height. Yeah, they can. They're very learnable, even for non-speedrunners. They take practice for sure, and to get really good at them, they take a long... There's a lot of, I think, technical details that go into getting exactly the launch that you want. But both front hop and backflip style wind bombs are both things that I think pretty much any player can learn. There's really good tutorials out there. Here in a moment, we're going to hear Italian Old Man. I'll pause for a moment for him. What an absolute legend. Italian Old Man is kind of notorious in the Breath of the Wild community. All Dungeons is run in Italian because the voice acting for the dungeon cutscenes is fastest when the voice language is set to Italian. If you're familiar with Any Percent, you know that Any Percent is run in French because in that category with those cutscenes, the French voice acting is fastest. But every category is a little bit different in this game, because it's not the text boxes that are determining length, but rather the voice acting and the cutscenes. So All Dungeons gets a variety of cutscenes that Any Percent doesn't, obviously because we're going to a lot more of the map, progressing a lot more of the story, And so for those particular cutscenes that we get, Italian is going to be our fastest language. And a fun byproduct of that is that we get to hear the Italian old man yelling at us as we exit our first shrine. Our runners have both arrived at Magnesis Shrine. You can see that CrazyAZ was a little bit behind coming out of the Bomb Shrine, but a quick shrine clip and a fast BLSS have him kind of leapfrogging into the lead here. We got lots and lots of time, but those were pretty nice, clean movements after a little bit of a rocky start from Crazy. This clip into the elevator in Magnesis can be certainly very finicky. When I was learning the speedrun of this game, that was the one that gave me the most trouble, that shrine clip, because in most of our shrines, 3 of the 4 plateau shrines, you clip through the outer wall of the shrine, but then you also have to clip into the elevator because the elevators are higher up. And so the Magnesis one can be finicky in terms of position and facing angle. All of these clips, by the way, are their own unique setups. There's not like one simple universal clip setup that works for all of the shrines. So our runners have had to learn the most optimal way to get skew and the most optimal way to clip into each shrine. Really advanced runners will sometimes opt for a risky wind bomb in the Magnesis Shrine, but both of our runners are playing it safe, which is probably the smart strategy. In a run this long, you don't want to start off on the wrong foot by killing yourself in Magnesis with a risky wind bomb. When done right, the so-called canal wind bomb, which is called canal because you launch yourself from down in that lower area where the little water canal is, saves, I think, in the neighborhood of 8 seconds. But it's quite difficult. And both of our runners opting for the simpler, safer strategy of just running, which is not all that much slower and infinitely safer and more consistent. If you're wondering why each of them blew themselves up with a bomb just before ending that shrine, one of the things that we'll have to talk about occasionally in this run is the ragdoll mechanics that Breath of the Wild has. Basically, when you shield jump and unequip your shield, you give Link what we refer to as a glitched ragdoll state. And that glitched ragdoll state prevents Link from being launched, like with a wind bomb, for example. Link will get hit with the bomb and just kind of jerk up in place and won't go anywhere. So to clear that glitched ragdoll state, the runner has to take knockback damage of some kind or some sort of damage that would ragdoll them. Or I guess maybe it'd be more accurate to say force them into the ragdoll animation. And so you'll see runners sometimes bomb themselves when they have the health to be able to do so. You'll also sometimes see runners land on their shield and then unequip it so that Link flops over. Back in the old days before wind bombs, they used to clear ragdoll by intentionally knocking themselves off of their horses, which is always kind of a funny thing to see. Interestingly, both of our runners opting to wind bomb up to stasis from this pine tree, this dark brown pine tree here. One of the sort of friendly debates that we have in the community is whether the pine tree is a better setup, or whether the birch-like tree behind it is the better setup place. Both of our runners getting successful wind bombs. That's a tricky wind bomb. You have to get a lot of height out of that. Glan just clearing it, but both of them with really nice stasis segments there. You may have noticed that Glan was collecting some extra items there. He collected an extra shield and some apples, and he's going to use those later in kind of the main glitch that makes this route possible, which is a glitch called inventory slot transfer. We'll have plenty of time to talk about that later. It's a complicated glitch and very, very powerful. So we'll save a little bit of discussion of that. Crazy in kind of an interesting predicament here. If you remember, oh, that worked out. Okay. He was having to pay really close attention to his Boko Spear durability there. He needs that Boko Spear for the aforementioned IST glitch. IST depends on having a very specific inventory combination, depending on the setup that you're using. The Boko Spear has very poor durability, and he had to he wasted a couple of spear shots on the Red Bokoblin in the very first split. And so you can see he's getting that badly damaged warning. It's in Italian, but basically it says your spear is badly damaged. And he did not get to do, I think, didn't get to do as many hits as he would normally do there to fully charge up that boulder. But it worked out great. So nice little bit of improvisation from him. Durability on that spear tends to be pretty darn tight. So I guess we haven't talked really, or I haven't explained BLSS much. BLSS was a glitch discovered in, I want to say September of 2021, maybe. Has it really been that long? I think it has. Which allows for very fast and efficient horizontal travel. The real benefits of BLSS are that it doesn't require any stamina usage. As you can see, Glan is BLSSing to Cryonis now and is not using any stamina at all, whereas Wind Bombs and BTBs require stamina usage. It also can get up to speeds that are at the game's speed cap. So basically as fast as the game will let you go. You have to accelerate up to that point, but runners who are very good can accelerate quickly enough to quickly get up to basically the game's speed limit. And so the disadvantages of BLSS are it will not gain you any height. It only goes straight forward. Glenn having a little bit of issue here with, I presume, with his position, maybe because his skew looked like it should be fine. Yeah, there we go. Got through there. Again, all of these skew clips have their own setups, and so they have their own little unique quirks and things to pay attention to. The other really big advantage of BLSS is that it doesn't use any health. Every time you do a wind bomb, you lose a heart of damage automatically. No avoiding it. BLSS is completely free in terms of the health cost. Wind bombs, however, are a bit more versatile. So with a BLSS, you need to be able to have a ledge that you can step up onto. That step up animation with the bomb stuck to Link's hand is basically how we get Link into this kind of floating across the map state. So you saw there CrazyAZ using the kind of rocky ledge there to make Link step up, and the step up puts him into this weird floating state. Very nicely done paraglider segment there from Crazy. He's going to have himself a nice little lead, about a 2-minute lead or so, maybe more, heading out of Plateau. So you will see both of our... Actually, one of the things that makes all dungeons really cool is that you'll see BLSSs a lot. You'll also see plenty of wind bombs, but all dungeons is one of the only categories that still employs BTBs, which for a long time were like the gold standard of Breath of the Wild movement tech, and still, in my opinion, the coolest movement tech. Okay, interesting. Crazy must be doing a slightly different IST setup here, because typically the IST setup that most runners are using requires you to grab the Boko Club, or I guess technically it requires you to grab a one-handed weapon of some sort. Most runners grab the Boko Club. They disarm the Bokoblin down there at the base of Temple of Time with by dropping a bomb on him, and then grab the club and scoot on out of there. Crazy is either going to grab a different one-handed weapon, or he may be doing a different IST setup entirely. So I guess maybe, well, trying to decide when to try to fit in the IST discussion, because it's kind of a little bit of an involved explanation. Let's see what Glan does here. Okay, yeah, Glan getting the fall damage cancel there. I haven't even talked about fall damage cancels. We don't do them as much anymore, but you've probably seen both on the way to the bomb shrine near the beginning, and then there at dropping down to Temple of Time. We don't have the paraglider, so we don't have a convenient way of stopping Link's momentum. And so the runners will do a technique called a fall damage cancel, which basically involves them going into the throw aim animation as they're falling, beginning to throw the weapon when they're near to the ground, and then once that animation has begun, they're unequipping either their shield or their weapon. And what that basically does is it confuses the heck out of the game, and it makes it think that that is the place that Link is falling from. Basically resets Link's falling height, or where the game tries to calculate it from. And so that's how they were able to survive those very, very high drops there. Now that they've got the paraglider, you will not see fall damage cancels anymore. Glan actually threw the weapon, which we usually try to avoid doing. That may have been intentional. He might have wanted that out of his inventory, or it may have been whoops-a-daisy. But he chose not to grab it again, so my guess is it was intentional, or at least like kind of a whatever thing. So our runners, Crazy has already done this. Glan is on his way, but they're going to the observation room balcony at Hyrule Castle. And there they're going to grab some extra arrows. They're going to grab a royal bow, which is a high power and high durability bow. And they're going to grab 3 ancient arrows out of a chest. And here, when they get to Rito Village, after a little bit more collection, Crazy kind of having a rough time with the bomb there. After a bit more collection, they are going to basically duplicate their ancient arrows and turn 3 ancient arrows into a lot. In order to do that, they're going to need to grab some items here at the Tabantha Fairy Fountain. Crazy's going to grab some fairies. Also going to grab some Mighty Thistle, or Spadacchiofa in Italian, which I probably have horribly butchered. Looks like he's also grabbing some carrots, or a carrot. That may just be backup food to make sure he's able to get to a Rito without any issue. And then upon arriving at Rito, he's going to grab a Royal Claymore, by the way, on the way to Rito Village right here by the Tabantha Tower. High damage, high durability weapon. And he's going to use those things to execute the IST, or inventory slot transfer glitch. I will be the first person to admit that I am not an expert in IST, but I'll do my best to give a little explanation. Crazy's BLSS spot here, this is a tricky one. It can be very finicky. Well, he's going to basically get in that range of ancient arrows, which, I think between ancient arrows and normal arrows, we can agree that ancient arrows are going to be better. Ooh, this is a dicey circumstance. I don't know how he didn't get hit by that moblin, holy smokes. This is going to afford Glan an opportunity to catch up a little bit. Crazy wisely choosing to save here in case that moblin... Okay, he's just going to save and reload. The save and reload resets the moblin's position and should let him be in peace. It was a Terraria joke. Fair enough. My apologies for not getting it. You may have noticed Glan Glan and Crazy did slightly different things from the castle balcony. Crazy made his way to the top of the Malice Pillar with a mid-air wind bomb, and Glan chose to go towards, or actually above, Sanctum. Glan's method is a little bit safer and a little bit slower, but it also allows for a higher starting spot for the BLS slide. Since Crazy's method required a mid-air wind bomb, that makes it a little bit difficult, or a bit more difficult, but certainly faster. Okay, nice. He's got his BLS heading towards Rito. Glan collecting his items from the fairy fountain. Now, okay, IST. I've been trying to get to IST here, and I keep getting distracted by the stuff happening on screen. Inventory slot transfer was discovered less than a year ago. I don't remember exactly when it was discovered. Certainly less than a year ago. It's an inventory manipulation glitch that revolves around doing an action that we call breaking inventory slots. Basically, the game has an internal variable that it uses to keep track of the number of slots that you have occupied in your visible inventory at any given time. They call this the M count. And so we're going to do a series of inputs to fool the game into miscalculating the M count. First, Crazy needs to talk to a couple of Ritos, the elder here, and then Teba's wife. That's just to progress the story enough to be able to complete the Divine Beast. After that, he's going to head down to the shop. You'll see Glan do the same here shortly, as Glan has kind of tightened things up considerably here. In order to break slots, we need access to a vendor that we can sell to. And you're going to see our runners perform a series of inputs to hold smuggle items, which will stick the items to Link's right hand in such a way that you can talk to the shopkeeper and interact with them while Link is holding items. Our runners are going to sell the items that are stuck to, or sell the same items that are stuck to their hand. And then upon finishing selling, the items that are stuck to Link's hand are going to drop. Basically what happens there is the game double counts the items leaving the inventory because it counts the ones that you sold, and then it also counts the ones that you dropped. That will allow inventory slots to be transferred between saves. It allows materials and items and pieces of equipment to be transferred between saves. So Glan here is dropping some items on the ground. You can see he's got a fairy and some other things stuck to his hand. The shopkeeper talk input is frame perfect. And now he's selling off those items. Selling 4 item slots breaks 4 slots. He will then pick up some items and then break, I assume, 3 more slots. But this is a different setup than the one that I'm familiar with, so I could be wrong on that. Anyway. Yeah, it looks like 3 more slots. Or sorry, I'm looking at Crazy's screen, but I think I'm saying Glan's name. It looks like their 2 setups are different. And neither of them are the setup that I'm most familiar with. Upon the reload, some items are going to be transferred into the reloaded save file. Items from this current file are going to be transferred through the reload. That's going to duplicate some items. It's also going to do some weird inventory manipulation that I can't really explain adequately in this setting, in order to corrupt some items' values up into the hundreds. So they will wind up with 200, 300, 400 fairies, depending on the durability of the item that is performing the corruption. They'll also wind up with a lot of ancient arrows and possibly some normal arrows as well. Let's see what's in Crazy's inventory here. He's going to sell, and he's got 900 fairies. So what I think that means is that his 9 durability pot lid, the durability of that item was transferred onto the fairy slot. And the game interprets that as, oh, well, you now have 900 fairies. Because for whatever reason, the game translates the durability value into a multiple of 100. So 9 durability equals 900 fairies. Crazy is selling a certain number of them simply to get rupees, and then the rest of them he'll use to automatically heal for the rest of the run and not have to die at all. We'll see here in a moment what kind of arrow situation he has. Looks like 4,000 regular arrows. I'll be curious to see what his ancient arrow count is. At this point, our runners are invincible. They can't be killed. Even though he sold off a bunch of his fairies, he still has more than enough to survive just about any amount of damage that he could take. You see Glan has 999 fairies. Yeah, exactly, the aversion. So Glan also selling a good amount of fairies for rupees. The rupees, by the way, are needed later on to buy some clothing, the lady clothes to get into Gerudo Town, and then also some shock arrows to be able to complete Vah Ruta. Crazy with 6,000 ancient arrows, which is pretty wild. Interesting to see, you know, a casual player would never dream of wasting ancient arrows on the flight range minigame. But look what we're doing. Glan also arriving at the flight range. The flight range is the prerequisite to boarding our first Divine Beast, which is Divine Beast Vah Meadow, the big burb up in the sky. And so you basically have to prove your worth as an archer and your ability to fly, quote unquote, fly through the air with a paraglider before Teba will take you up. He kind of sizes you up when you arrive at the flight range and says, "Yeah, this guy's worthless. You gotta prove that you have what it takes." And our runners both have what it takes. Most runners have a very set, methodical order. They know which 5 targets they're going to hit. They know which order they're going to go in. They know exactly which way to spin, when to drop, and when to rise. Because our runners have an insane amount of ancient arrows, they can afford to use ancient arrows on the Divine Beast cannons here, which ordinarily take 2 bomb arrows, but will only require 1 ancient arrow. So that cuts things down a little bit. Crazy, interestingly, choosing not to go. You can do a mid-air wind bomb here to get to the middle of the Divine Beast more quickly. Must just not be feeling comfortable with that today. Perhaps playing a little bit safe in a race setting. Once you're at the center of the Divine Beast, there are some really nice visual cues that makes those arrow shots pretty simple. I hesitate to call them free, but they are not too difficult if you know the cues you're looking for. It's like Glan's going to go for this midair, maybe? No, okay. A lot of runners pump the glider like that in preparation to get timing for the midair, but he's going with his own strategy here, which is interesting. One really great shot, the other not quite landing. It's okay, we've got lots of bow durability and no shortage of ancient arrows. A little bit of a different approach here. These shots aren't easy, partly because they're long range, but partly because the Divine Beast rotates counterclockwise through the sky as the arrows are in flight, and so you have to lead the shots a little bit in addition to aiming them very precisely. Any all dungeons route is going to go to Vah Meadow first for 2 principal reasons. Reason number 1 is the champion ability that you get from this dungeon, Rivali's Gale, or since we're in Italian, Ravioli's Gale, is basically a requirement to complete the other 3 dungeons using the strats that we use. They make the other 3 dungeons very, very fast. And the weapon reward that you get from the Village Elder is the Great Eagle Bow, which is an incredibly powerful bow that we will use for all of our boss fights. including but not limited to Calamity Ganon and all the blights. So that's why our runners are heading here first. The route that I expect them to use will be Vametto, Vanaboris, the camel in Gerudo Desert, Varuta, the elephant in Zero's Domain, and then the last one will be Varudanya in Eldin/Death Mountain. Oh no, Crazy having a little bit of trouble there. You're seeing slightly different approaches that our runners are using here. Crazy opted to unlock an updraft by shooting a Malice Eye and go around from one window to the other, and Glan is attempting an extended shield clip to get right through this sort of Malice wall here. I guess it's not a Malice wall, it's like a, I don't know, force field wall thing. And made it through, lost his shield in the process, but I think he has a second. The shield, by the way, is necessary for BLSSs. So losing one's shield and not having a backup would be a pretty disastrous thing, but you can see there Glan has a backup shield. Good on him. Crazy, a little bit ahead at this point, is activating his 4th terminal. Each of these divine beasts have 5 terminals that you have to unlock. One of the cool things about Vametto is that we don't actually have to get the map. The other dungeons all require getting the map in order to manipulate the divine beasts kind of mechanic in some way. But with with Vametto, we can do everything that we need to do without having to change the beast's position at all. The kind of mechanic of Vametto is you tilt the wings to be angled one way or another. But with wind bombs and BLSSs and shield clipping, we don't really need to do that, so we can skip it. That last terminal is locked behind. You have to get this big slidey thing, this slidey weight that you see Glan stasising right now, and use it to hit the button. Glan is doing a different and more up-to-date strat than what Crazy was doing. He's going to bomb arrow the fan here to temporarily raise that gate and then drop the gate on the slidey thing to knock it in against the button, which is pretty darn cool, I think. And he's unlocking his 5th terminal, final terminal, as Crazy blasts through Windblight Phase 1, getting a little bit unfortunate there. The timing on these Blight fights, they all like to kind of teleport around on you. And if you're not fast enough, they can teleport away before you get the chance to inflict enough damage with the bow and ancient arrow combo. Crazy right now is using the royal bow with ancient arrows, and kind of getting trolled here. Thanks, Windblight. Yeah, he'll probably be a little bit frustrated with that fight, but really, all told, not too bad. He survived to live another day. Yeah, the ancient arrows are incredibly powerful, especially against the Blights and Ganon. So we can basically melt them almost instantaneously. You can see one, not even a headshot, one regular shot from an ancient arrow is enough to knock down Windblight out of the air and basically render him incapacitated, and then we can just unload on him. Pretty close here between these two runners. Crazy with maybe a 20 or 30 second lead on Glan, heading out of Vametto. He is going to run up to the Rito Village Elder and collect the Great Eagle Bow from the chest. The Great Eagle Bow is amazing because it's high damage, high durability, and it's a triple shot bow. It's also got great range, so it will be used for anything important the rest of the run. It's going to be used for the Great Eagle Bow is going to be the way to go. We are now going to head from the north west corner of the map all the way to the southwest corner of the map with a very long BLSS. We're going to kind of wind through some mountains, dodge some obstacles. This one is a little bit monka steer because there are things in the way. But we're not going to let those things stop us from getting where we need to be. If our runners had gotten the tower, which some runners, myself included, choose to do for this category, they would be warping to the Cryonis Shrine and doing a shorter BLSS. But the warp is kind of slow. And it's kind of a runner's choice sort of thing, where if you're good at these long-range BLSSs, towerless route saves a bit of time. Crazy there had our first experience this evening with the speed cap. I think I alluded earlier that the game has kind of a stop you in your tracks mechanic when it's concerned that you're getting too fast. And so I forget that we have it figured out in like kilometers per hour or something crazy like that. But basically, there's ways that runners have of telling when they're approaching the speed cap. If you exceed the speed limit and get busted, the game just stops you in place. It doesn't drop you out of the sky, but all of your momentum is just immediately zapped. And that's why you saw Crazy kind of get stopped there in the sky and have to rebuild his speed. Recovered from it pretty nicely. Arriving here on the outskirts of Gerudo Town, he's going to talk to Benjamin the Creeper, who is definitely not spying on women. Nope, not at all. We have to talk to Benjamin in order to, because if we don't talk to him, the individual here at Karakar Bazaar, who sells the lady clothes, is not there. The only way, well, the way that most runners choose to enter Gerudo Town is just by ponying up 600 rupees and buying the lady clothes off of this fellow here. And I say the majority because there's a couple of runners, one runner actively running this route, Moonswing, who skips the clothes completely and uses a coordinate desync method to enter Gerudo Town in a very tight window of time without the clothes by confusing the game. But these runners are going the more kind of standard accepted route. Yeah, a version. We're seeing both of our runners use the VR mode. The reason why runners might choose to do that is because they want to make the game lag. And you might think, well, what the heck? Why would we want to do that? Nobody likes lag, right? Lag is actually useful in Breath of the Wild in some contexts because it has a mechanic where when the game lags, it tries to compensate by speeding Link up. And so if we can induce lag while Link is wind bombing or kind of ragdolling through the air and then pull the glider on a lag frame, it'll actually increase his movement speed by about 1.5 times. And he can get places much more efficiently. In Gerudo Desert, it's really, really hard to get lag because there's just not that much stuff to look at that's going to force lag. And so the VR mode essentially forces the game to render twice and makes it much easier to get lag in unlaggy areas. Glan here having a little bit of a tough time getting a wind bomb off of these rocks. The wind bombs are super versatile. You have to be able to get bullet time. And on sloped rock surfaces like this, it can be a little bit tricky to do that. Looks like he's got it though, and he's on his way to collect his lady clothes. Crazy, meanwhile, has arrived back at Gerudo Town and is talking to the Gerudo chief Riju. And he's coming up on what is a very, in my opinion, maybe the most difficult segment of the run, which is the travel to get to Master Koga. We've got to fight Master Koga to retrieve the Thunder Helm before we enter Vanaboris. And so this is where we're going to see some old movement tech come out with a couple of BTBs. BTBs, bullet time bounce. Those of you who've been around Breath of the Wild for a while may know something about BTBs. Basically, Crazy is going to use arrow shots to lure this black bokoblin you can see into a specific position. He's going to freeze that bokoblin, and then he's going to shield jump and land on it in bullet time. What that's going to do is it's going to send him flying. The bullet time in this game is incredibly broken. And it landing on that ragdolling object in bullet time multiplies the physics interaction something like 19 times or something like that. Crazy was unfortunate and got a pretty high angle that isn't getting him quite as far as he wanted to go. But it's going to work nevertheless. It's going to get him there with a little bit of running and maybe an extra wind bomb in here. We'll see Glan probably attempt the same here shortly after buying some shock arrows. We're not done with the BTBs though, because there is another BTB coming to get up and over the mountains that you see in front of Crazy, all the way to the Giga hideout. So again, he's going to use arrow shots to, this time, lure a Moblin, freeze him when he gets to a certain position, and then jump from way up here and land on him in bullet time with his shield. And that ragdoll interaction, so you can see that Moblin, you probably couldn't really see it, but the Moblin is basically like getting ragdolled by Link landing on him when he's frozen with the shield out. And we are exploiting that ragdoll interaction by implementing bullet time to multiply the force. And once we transfer that speed to the paraglider, we are sailing and zooming for a long ways. Here we're Crazy's doing another shield clip. We don't want to go through the Yiga clan hideout the normal way. The normal way is pretty slow. And so we just sneak through the back door by shield clipping. That one's actually, as far as shield clips go, a very easy one, relatively speaking. For whatever reason, it just is very easy to clip through that wall. You might see Glan do a slightly modified clip setup. There's a couple of different ways you can do it. Let's see how Glan's BTBs go. Boko BTBs like this one are much more difficult than the Moblin BTBs. And the reason for that is the Bokos are much smaller. They have smaller hitboxes. This looks pretty good. There we go. That's a little low, but absolutely workable. Oh yeah, very good. Okay. He's going to gain a bit of time back on Crazy there. Slightly better BTB, a little bit faster. Bokos are much smaller. Their hitboxes are smaller. Their angles are finickier. The Moblin BTBs tend to be much more forgiving because the Moblins have really big backs and broad shoulders. Crazy here is trying to dispose of Master Koga as efficiently as he can. Most runners use a combination of Great Eagle Bow and Ancient Arrow shots, and then spin attacks with the Royal Claymore. Very nicely done by Crazy. He is using a technique that we use to get double hits, where he starts his spin attack facing away from the enemy and then kind of spins backwards into him. And expertly done. That was a very, very clean Koga fight from Crazy. There's a relatively new technique that he just used to get a one cycle on that last phase. Previously, before, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, we did not know of a way to one cycle that fight. But some glitch hunter, I don't remember who, I wish I could credit them, but I don't remember, discovered that If you slam the Magnesis ball into Koga but release Magnesis just before the ball hits him, you get a double hit. And 2 hits with the ball is enough to end the cycle, or end the phase with only 1 cycle. Crazy did a very nice job of getting that 1 cycle there. All 3 1 cycles, really. Very, very fast Koga. And as one runner exits Koga, another runner enters. Hope to see the same clean Koga fight from Glan. By the way, both of these runners will survive to the next round of the tournament. The way the tournament is set up, we are wrapping up the group phase where runners have been placed into 4 groups of 3 runners each. Each runner has played or is playing each of the other runners, or racing each of the other runners in their group 1 time each. And then kind of the two runners survive out of each group. Crazy and Glan, the 3rd runner in their group, had to drop out of the tournament, unfortunately, due to some personal issues. And so this match is not loser out, it's basically for seeding purposes. So it takes a little bit of the pressure off, I would think. Crazy on his way back to Gerudo Town. Again, because we did not unlock the tower, we can't warp. We have to do a BLSS slide. But Crazy doing a great job. Very clean desert segment so far from Crazy. He's going to have another little chat with Riju, and then it's off to board Divine Beast Von Boris. Steve Glenn can get this 1 cycle here. Beautifully done. It's a surprisingly simple strat. Once you get the timing down, it doesn't require anything super precise. It's funny that it eluded us for so long, and yet the answer to how to get that 1 cycle is so simple. So nice job to both of our runners there. All right, I'm gonna put on my Italian translator hat and let you know that Riju has just told Link that he needs to go to the southern outpost to meet her and her sand seal, Patricia. Yes, you heard that right. It is Patricia, that's the name. And they're going to attack Divine Beast Von Boris together. Riju is kind of the Teba of this section in that she assists Link getting to the Divine Beast. Crazy getting a super launch there. I don't remember if I actually said the term super launch earlier, but I know we talked about lag and speeding up wind bombs. The term we have for that is super launch. He got a super launch, but it was a little off angle. So he's having to do the climb of shame here, unfortunately. Climbing up the ladder. It doesn't lose too much time, but it kind of feels bad, man. And Riju is going to say, hey, let's do this. Here's 20 bomb arrows. And we're going to say, what do we need your bomb arrows for? We have 1 billion ancient arrows. Actually, we do need bomb arrows to take out the feet of Vonaboris. The Vonaboris mechanic, or the strat that we have to do to get onto Vonaboris is shooting the Divine Beast's feet, which are glowing with the kind of purple malice. And for some reason, even though Vometo lets you do it with ancient arrows, and actually you can do fewer shots with ancient arrows, Naboris does not respond to ancient arrows at all. You have to use the bomb arrows. Fortunately, because we have the Great Eagle Bow and now the Duplex Bow, both of which are multi-shot, we can still take out each foot with 1 arrow shot if we aim it correctly. Let's see what Crazy does here. There's 2 different main strats that are used for the Divine Beast entry, and fantastic. Crazy's going to go for the riskier one. I love it. The vanilla way is simply to ride the Sand Seal and stick close to Riju, and she'll use her force field to protect you from Vonneborus's shock attack. Crazy is going to say, no thanks, we don't need your help, and come over to this rock, start a BLS slide from the rock. This one can be kind of obnoxious because the slope of the hill is irregular, so it's hard to get a good step up from it. But essentially, it's going to get him to Vonneborus, where he's going to drop the BLS, intentionally go into bullet time, and knock out each of the 4 feet swiftly. If all goes according to plan, that is. Let's see how he does. You can see the glowing feet in the distance through the sandstorm. And 1, 2, 3. He's out of stam, but should be able to get... Oh. Okay. I only saw 3 shots. I'm not sure how he managed to get 4 feet in 3 shots, but nice job. Maybe I miscounted. I don't know. Very efficiently done. Glan heading off to the outpost to meet Riju. Not getting the super there, it doesn't look like. That's okay. He also will climb the ladder. I'm not sure whether he does the BLSS Divine Beast Assault or whether he does the more typical Sand Seal version. We'll see, I suppose. Of all the Divine Beasts that we do, Naboris is maybe the wildest of them with the routing. We're going to make use of 2 Gales. We're going to cheese some electricity puzzles with shock arrows. And all told, what is, at least for me, was the most challenging Divine Beast casually. Crazy will be able to wrap up here in about 5 minutes if everything goes well, including the Thunderblight fight. Yeah, Dragon Crystal, it must have been something like that. We'll give Crazy credit and say it was all intentional. In reality, I think that was just a happy accident, but, you know, it's good. A lot of runners on those slopes heading up to the neck here will set skew for an extended shield clip later. Crazy opting not to do that. What he is going to do here is use the duplex bow, which shoots 2 arrows back to back, and shoot the electrode. Oh no! Oh no! That's extremely unfortunate. That's a finicky trick. Looks like he's going to try going for it again. This ends up being very difficult because the neck has moved position some. The way this is supposed to go, as we see Glan doing the more typical Sand Seal Meadow or Naboris Assault, the way that's supposed to go is you line up one of the electrodes. I'll explain why he's closing the game here in a moment, folks. You line up one of the electrodes using the wheel like he did, and then you use shock arrows to temporarily activate the other electrode. It raises the neck. You drop your way in and carefully activate the terminal. Excuse me. Before it starts going down, because the shock arrow charge is temporary. He unfortunately missed the terminal activation, which there's kind of a small window of time where you can activate it. And because the neck elevator has moved, it's really, really hard to... It might be impossible to do it second try. So the only choice there probably is to reload. Unfortunately, a byproduct of IST, the glitch that we did earlier in Rito, is that the broken inventory slots are active until the game is closed and reopened. Reloading the game at that point would have duplicated his Rivali's Gale, which you would think would be a good thing, but in reality, it freaks the game out and it deactivates Rivali's Gale. You can't use it. So if you have to reload at any point in all dungeons, the only thing you can do is close the game and eat the time loss that comes from closing and reopening the game. Let's see him get it this time. There we go. So you can see he kind of had to slide his way down there, line up with the terminal, activate it. Now he's going to drop out the backside. That's how it's supposed to go. Unfortunate that he couldn't get that the first time, but that happens. Happened to me very recently, actually. I think my PB has that mistake, which was super frustrating. Now he's off and away. A mid-air wind bomb gets him into the hump here. He's going to dispose of some Malice Eyes, activate terminal number 2. Meanwhile, Glan is over here going to be trying this same trick, hoping to get it first try. Certainly would not mind picking up some time on Crazy through a clean neck terminal. This beast illustrates just how broken Rivali's Gale is, because Crazy just galed over that little wall to get to terminal number 3, completely skipping the electricity puzzle. He's dropping down and able to glide to terminal number 4. Let's see how Glan does here with this thing. Nicely done. The mid-air after this is tricky, though. Let's see if he goes for it or if he does something different. He's going to glide and land, it looks like. And, okay, so Glan is using slightly different Gale routing. One of the nice things about this category is you can route your Gales according to your preference, and he's going to choose to use all 3 Gales in Vonneboris instead of saving one for later. Ooh. He didn't mean to drop down there. And that is going to be a problem, because he's got to get a terminal that's up there, and without the map, there is no way of making that elevator active. He can go get the map. I'm not sure what I would do in this circumstance. This is kind of a tough one. Crazy, meanwhile, has gotten 4 of the 5 terminals, is heading to terminal number 5. Has to get the map to activate the 5th terminal, because in the starting position of the Divine Beast, the 5th terminal is sideways, and it can't be activated in its sideways position. So he's got to spin the map, or spin the kind of rotating abdomen section, and activate that terminal, and then just spin all the way back around again. Again, some runners will choose to extended shield clip through that grating there, but he's, again, playing it maybe a little bit safe and going with the consistent strat. Glan, meanwhile, mid-air, or not mid-air, kind of went back out to where the neck is and just wind-bombed back up to the top part of that terminal. Perfectly viable, loses them a bit of time, but better than a reload, I think. Crazy is now heading to face off against Thunderblight. Thunderblight is kind of scary. Thunderblight is less scary when you have a billion fairies and can't die. He's still tricky. Oh dear. Crazy, I think, just made a mistake, and instead of dodging or blocking the electric balls, attacked with his claymore, got shocked and dropped the claymore, and now he's got to do some off-script improvisation. Okay, he's back to his starting position and is going to basically hope to reset the fight, I think. This is difficult because everything's in a different spot now. The goal here is to break Thunderblight's shield and then land a bunch of Ancient Arrowhead shots with the Great Eagle Bow. Man, he's getting really unlucky with all these electric ball attacks. I don't know that I've ever seen 4 electric ball attacks in a row. Backflip, 2 Claymore hits, gets bullet time. The Claymore hits break the shield but don't do damage, but the Ancient Arrowhead shots just obliterate his health. A little bit of a rocky start there, but a good recovery from Crazy. Glan, meanwhile, is getting terminal number 4. I did see Glan set skew, so it looks like he's going to try for this extended shield clip. Maybe he lost skew, because I think he just reset skew. Oh, he got D-pad trolled. His D-pad pulled up the rune menu instead of the shield menu, but second try is not too bad. Oh dear, I missed what happened. At the beginning of phase 2, you have to do the kind of filthy casual strat and use Magnesis to put one of these metal rods near Thunderblight to shock him. Thunderblight then can ragdoll in some really weird ways. I didn't see what caused Crazy to miss the electrocution there, but gets its second try and finishes the phase cleanly. Oh, Glan having the same thing happen, but his Claymore stays close by. Both our runners having a little bit of trouble with Thunderblight phase 1. And because Glan never broke the shield, the Flurry Rush doesn't break the shield. He was not able to land Ancient Arrow shots. So he's going to have to try that again. There we go. Gets that shield broken. And using the pedestal, interestingly, to get bullet time there. That works pretty well. And he'll look for a cleaner phase 2. So now you see Crazy, having finished, Naboris is going to warp to the Divine Beast, which is way up high on the top of a mountain, and is going to use a little ledge near the Divine Beast in order to get bullet time. Or, sorry, to start a BLSS slide to get to the next location. And very nice phase 2 from Glan. Yeah, these runners, this has been an interesting race because Crazy will pull ahead a little bit, and then he will, Glan will make up some ground. We haven't seen Glan in the lead from the very beginning. Crazy is, the wind up here on the top of the mountain is ridiculous. And is kind of getting trolled a bit by the wind. But gets his slide going, and I believe Crazy will be heading to Zora's Domain to complete Divine Beast of Baruta next. Yeah, looks like he's headed that direction. The height of Vanaboris allows you to slide right into Zora's Domain. Have to do a little bit of steering, but otherwise it's pretty simple. One of the quirks of BLSS is that you, when you're in the Bowlift Smuggle state, you have to hold down B the entire time. If you let go of B, he will just drop in place, which is quite bad. Huge time loss. The other thing is, if your left stick goes neutral, you see that both our runners are wiggling the stick back and forth. That's what pushes the bomb against Link's character model and propels him through the air. If they go neutral, excuse me, at any point, the BLSS will drop also. And so it requires kind of this careful, constant attention to detail. Usually isn't a problem, but every once in a while, it can be an issue. Not that I want to comms curse anybody into dropping a BLSS into the middle of Hyrule, but... And because we've gotten here so quickly, you can see that Zora's Domain, which is, you know, there's tons of textures and polygons, is not loaded. King Dorephan wasn't loaded, finally gets loaded, and the cutscene activates. This is the section of the run that we call Fish Drama. It's a solid 8 minutes of cutscenes with just a little bit of action punctuated in the middle. I was hoping that the runners would get to Fish Drama at different times so that when one runner was doing Fish Drama, the other would be doing something that we could talk about and pay attention to, but it looks like they're going to be mostly there at the same time. This is basically where the game kind of pushes you to go first. If you're following the game kind of casually, the game heavily suggests and routes you towards Zora's domain as your first divine beast. So as a consequence, it's the one that I think has the most developed storyline. What's going on here is all the Zoras are kind of mad at Link because they think that it's his fault that their beloved Princess Mipha died. And of course we know that it would never be Link's fault. But Muzu in particular, that kind of manta ray, hammerhead shark looking Zora, is angry with Link and is kind of prejudiced towards Hylians and is mad at the idea that that Mipha could have ever cared for Link, and there's this whole love triangle thing. It's pretty great. But we're gonna get to sit here and watch our runners mash in Italian. I guess this would be a good time to talk about our runners a little bit. I know I introduced them earlier. Crazy, as far as I know, is kind of a Breath of the Wild exclusive runner. His main categories in the past have been any percent, and then all main quests, and he has a soft spot in my heart because he's one of the few other people who is in the recent past run the all quests route, which is near and dear to me. It takes a special person to torture themselves for 9 or 10 hours and complete all of the Breath of the Wild quests, but Crazy is one of the few who has done it. Glan, on the other hand, has run a much broader range of games. He was featured this past AGDQ in January running a glitched, I forget which category, but a glitched A Link to the Past category. He won a Link to the Past glitched tournament a few years back, and allegedly is a pretty big fan of frogs, or so I hear. Crazy, on the other hand, is a cheesecake aficionado, and I'm not exaggerating. So if you ever want to talk cheesecake, hit up your guy Crazy, and you might have a lot in common. Sidon has people left, and Link ran after him. They're both trying to talk some sense into Muzu. Link had to put on the Zora armor. There is no way to skip the Zora armor, at least not that we've discovered. The Gerudo clothing can be skipped, at least in theory, or, in practice. People do it. The Zora armor is unskippable. It does have the useful feature of allowing Link to swim up waterfalls, which is kind of cool. But he has to equip it, otherwise this quest will not advance. And it also makes the assault on Va Ruta impossible. Crazy finishing up most of the mashing. He's going to hop up onto the statue and desecrate Mipha's memory by wind bombing off of it. He's headed up to meet Sidon at the Eastern Reservoir. Eastern Reservoir? I don't know. The big reservoir. It is the Eastern Reservoir. Okay. And is going to prepare for the assault on Va Ruta. Va Ruta is sort of the water temple or the water dungeon of Breath of the Wild. And we'll be seeing Glan head in a similar direction here momentarily. So Link has mounted Sidon, Uwu, and Sidon is gonna swim him all around the Divine Beast, and it's another arrow shot challenge, basically, a target practice, more or less. Crazy is gonna have to break some ice blocks, The game intends for you to use Cryonis. Crazy's going to break one of them at least with a well-placed bow shot. And with the ice blocks broken, Sidon is going to take him over to the waterfall. And we have to shoot these pink glowing orbs. There is a way to one-cycle this. It's very hard, at least on one wheel of stamina. If you have stamina refill or extra stamina, it's much more doable. It's possible on one wheel of stamina, but it involves precise pre-fire to get one of the orbs from the surface or from water level, and then some very fast and quick shots for the other three to avoid running out of stamina. Crazy choosing to go for the much safer and not all that much slower 2-cycle. It's what most runners, other than the very top runners, are doing. And does a great job of it. Another fun little fact is that it's really, really costly to go for the 1-cycle and fail the last little arrow shot. Because if you've knocked out 3 of the 4, then 10 ice blocks spawn in instead of 3. So if you can't get all 4, it's best to only get 2, because then you only get 3. We're seeing Glan here about to embark upon the same adventure. He's choosing just to cryo them all, which is totally valid. Also looks like Glan chooses to play without gyro, which is probably the minority choice amongst Breath of the Wild players. Most of the active runners seem to prefer the gyro for aiming arrow shots and things like that. There are definitely some who go gyro free. And last 2 arrow shots for Glan. Nicely done. All right, so there's a couple of different routes that runners can take through Vah Ruta. Seeing Crazy going to go to terminal number 1 first here and perform what we affectionately call the coggers strat there, where he uses motion controls to kind of whip that lever, that gear, really quickly. Did a nice job there. In a newer routing choice that some runners have chosen to adopt, you can save one of your gales, one of your Rivali's gales, and immediately after entering that ramp heading up to the main chamber, you can gale up and get what will in Crazy's route be the final terminal number 5. That one is on a cycle, and it's a cycle that we can't control or manipulate easily. So by getting that terminal out of the way first, we are no longer then kind of bound by that cycle. Whereas even if everything goes perfectly for Crazy, you'll see him kind of have to sit and wait for that cycle a little bit at the end. Or conversely, if you make too many mistakes and are slow and you miss the cycle, then that costs you time too. Having gotten the map, Crazy is going to go up and get on top of the Divine Beast with wind bombs. Oh dear. This is not good. He's kind of in no man's land here, and wisely opting to use one of his gales. He wanted to save that for later, but with that spot he was in, it's definitely more optimal to use it there. It'll make the later part of the dungeon slightly slower, but not much. And there you see with Glan, probably one of the drawbacks to not using motion controls is he wasn't able to whip that hog around as quickly. Still did a pretty good job of it, but using stick controls is inherently slower for that than using gyro. And I'm wondering if Glan's He used all his gales in Vana Boris. I'm wondering if they have recharged. They probably haven't. So he's likely going to have to wind bomb up as well. In older routes, we would typically save 3 gales for Vahruta to get all the way up to the trunk without wind bombs. But that's not common anymore. This terminal that Crazy's waiting on right now is not the cycle terminal that I was talking about earlier. This is on a cycle. This cycle is lines up very nicely if everything goes correctly. But his little mishap earlier, getting up to the top of the trunk, made it in the wrong position. Fortunately, he didn't have to wait too long there. He also chose to stop this terminal a little bit early to make sure he didn't miss it, which was smart. And that is terminal number 5. Glan, meanwhile, making it to the very, very tippy-top trunk, or tippy-top terminal. And must have used gales. I didn't see it, but I see that his gales are very recently used up, so he must have just used the 3 gales. I didn't think that it had been long enough for those to be back up yet, but... So this water blight fight, not too difficult. The cryo block there is to allow the runners to get bullet time and spam headshots. And like with the other ones, those headshots with the radial bow and ancient arrows do a great deal of damage. So it lets you pretty efficiently blast through water blight. And let's see if Glan's got this last terminal on lock. Looks like he just... okay, yeah. Not too long. Probably about a 10 or 15 second wait here because the terminal was at the top. Crazy having a little bit of an issue finishing off phase 2. That's okay. All right. A little bit of an unorthodox phase 2, but got the job done. You also might be noticing that our runners are not grabbing the heart containers, which will likely strike some people as just flat out wrong. But given that we have unlimited health refills with all the fairies, they're absolutely not needed. Glan getting a very nice phase 1 there. So now, Crazy and then Glan shortly after will be heading on to Death Mountain, Eldin, Fahrudania, the final of the Divine Beasts. Crazy is being careful here because if you walk off the ledge by accident in that spot, it's really bad. You drop down, you have to climb up on the ladder. It's very unfortunate. Nice finish there for Glan. Oh, this is maybe worse though. Fortunately, okay, yeah, that's a smart backup. He glides back in and should be able to get enough height here in order to get up. He's heading for that waterfall where he will use the Zora armor to glide up or swim up the waterfall. But another little chance here for Glan to make up 10 or so seconds. Because I can see Glan's timer, I can tell you that he is well ahead of PB, having a very good race. Just a few hiccups, really, but very solid run. So Crazy is going to use one of these rocky ledges to get a BLS slide started. And that's going to take him all the way up to Vahradanya. Or to Goron City, I suppose, to start the Vahradanya stuff. Glan opting for a slightly different wind bomb path here. Landing, and oh dear. Okay. Fortunately able to grab onto the ledge, but didn't get bullet time. Again, these rounded ledges can be sometimes tricky to get bullet time in. And succeeding second try. Crazy is about to catch fire, and he's going to be on fire for about the next 7 to 8 minutes, probably of runtime. Because we have unlimited fairies, there is absolutely no reason to bother getting flame resist. He took a tough ricochet, though. This BLS getting into Goron City cleanly is very steering intensive, and when you're coming in hot with a fast BLS slide, it's awfully difficult to steer well. He recovers there pretty smoothly. Ping-pongs off the walls a little bit. One of the things about heading into Goron City and catching fire like this is both runners have to make sure that they equip their metal bow. Both of them still have the royal bow, which they grabbed just after Plateau ended. The metal bow will not burn up. If you have a wooden bow equipped, even if you put out the or quench the burning initially, if the bow is on fire when you enter this Goron City entry cutscene, it will burn up during the cutscene. And depending on which bow you have equipped, that can be really bad. If you have the Great Eagle bow equipped, that's basically run over, because it's real hard to do. I don't even know if it's possible. I guess it's possible, but it's hard to do Fire Blight and Calamity without the Great Eagle bow. A little bit of a Prage moment here for Crazy. He's heading off to rescue Yunobo. Yunobo is hanging out in a cave up here, and the game wants you to blow up the rock wall, holding him back with cannons. But again, why would we do that when we can just get there fast with a wind bomb and zoom in there before the rocks load? So very good job for Crazy. It requires a pretty fast and straight wind bomb. If you end up too slow and have to run it all, you're basically guaranteed for the rocks to load in. If your wind bomb is too slow, they are likely to load in. It's not terribly difficult, but it is something that can go wrong every once in a while, so good job on Crazy, and we'll hope the same for Glan here shortly. Another quirk of this game is that when you're on fire in Elden, it's usually not an issue. Wind bombing while you're on fire doesn't work any differently, with the exception that if you execute your wind bomb within the first kind of half-heart tick of damage after catching fire, the wind bomb will fail every single time. I'm not sure if anybody knows why, but that is what happens. Glan, I think, is going to be out of luck here. Yeah, the rock's loaded in. So he has two options now, and it looks like he's going to go for the ESC option. He's going to set skew, being really, really careful not to burn up his pot lid, and try to ESC through the back wall of the cave. Has to get the right frame. ESC is a frame perfect trick. In my experience, this ESC can be a little finicky. The slower but safer option is to just go over to the... Oh, there he goes. Nice job. You can go over to the last cannon and just shoot a cannon. And that's very easy, but it loses probably 20, 30, 40 seconds over optimal ESC. Excuse me. The Crazy also having a little bit of trouble getting bullet time off of these curved, rounded ledges. Getting it there. Crazy is off to rescue Yunobo yet again. And bullet time strikes again. Crazy, no. Yeah, bullet time just being a little bit wonky there for Crazy. He gets a funky angle as a result. It's definitely doable. He can make this work. Not exactly what he intended. And there you could just see when there's lag in bullet time, wind bombs are very likely to fail. And there, because the flaming fireball things were headed or were dropping, it increased the lag and made that wind bomb fail. Okay. So 2 ancient arrow shots dispenses of those 2 moblins. Yunobo says, "Thanks, buddy." And now he's going to repay us by helping us get into Varadania. And hopefully not trolling us too badly. Yunobo is notorious for being very, very trolly. Meanwhile, Glan's sneaking up and gaining a little bit of time here. Again, this is not a loser outmatch, so there's not a whole lot of pressure. But the winner of the race does get the higher seed heading into bracket play. So the main theme of this upcoming section, the assault on Vabradania, is yeeting Yunobo at Death Mountain with cannons. Yunobo becomes the cannonball. It's pretty wild. Along the way, we have to be careful not to leave Yunobo too far behind to make sure he doesn't get stuck on anything. And it's 3 total hits. 3 total times we send Yunobo into Vabradania. That's what allows us to enter the Divine Beast. Alright, Glan gonna make his way across Elden Bridge to begin the Yunobo escort as well. So one thing that those of you who've watched Breath of the Wild much will know about, that I haven't mentioned at all, is the whistle sprinting mechanic. During those times when we do have to run from place to place, we can use whistle sprinting, which is, mashing the run button while holding down the whistle button. This allows Link to sprint at close to full speed while regenerating stamina. In this section, that is not useful, partly because we could very easily leave Yunobo behind, but partly because when you whistle, that's Yunobo's signal to stop. We don't want him to stop, we want him to keep moving. We're limited in this section by how fast Yunobo will follow us. So the whole goal is don't allow him to slow down, don't leave him behind, because if you leave him behind, he'll stop and just kind of hunker down. And don't let either of the 2 of you get spied by these sentries. So you can see Crazy sending Yunobo into the Divine Beast, or blasting him into the Divine Beast for the first time. This is pretty auto-scrollery, not a ton that usually goes wrong here. And again, only so much that we can do to speed it up. It used to be a little bit more technical. As you can see, ancient arrow shots one-shot these guardians. We used to have to either avoid them or kill them by bashing them with metal boxes, which are located up on the cliffs, or by using Urbosa's Fury in some cases. Crazy smashing some ores for fun, I suppose. I can't imagine he's looking for anything useful out of those, but why not, right? On that subject, the kind of changes in the route that IST and BLSS have allowed, all dungeons used to be one of the most difficult categories this game had to offer, because you had to move very long distances between objectives. The Divine Beasts are basically in the four corners of the map, so there's lots of distance to travel. It doesn't require any shrines other than the plateau shrines, so the shrines refill your health. Categories that require shrines are generally easier because you're getting consistent health refills. But so it used to be this punishing category filled with tons and tons of brutally difficult BTBs, careful health management, and really kind of one of the hardest categories in the game. BLSS allowed long distance travel to be much easier, and so it took the difficulty level down substantially. And then with the implementation of the IST setup that basically loads you up with ancient arrows and fairies, renders you more or less invincible. That made it even easier. So, which is not a knock on these runners. To do it well is still challenging. The level of competition is very high, but it's not a particularly difficult run to play through from start to finish, is what I mean, I suppose. And certainly much less difficult than it used to be. It was featured on GDQ maybe 2 years ago, certainly before BLSS. Johnny Boomer, who was the world record holder at the time, ran it there and did a great job. But that was a completely different route. Completely different tech as well. All right, and Crazy entering Divine Beast Va Rudani, the final Divine Beast. We're probably within about 10 to 15 minutes of the end here. Glan, let's see how he does on this second part of the entry. Some nice arrow shots there. Sorry, this is the final part of the entry quest. Rudania is an interesting one. It has a few kind of unique strats that make it pretty cool, in my opinion. Very completely different from a casual playthrough of the dungeon, of course. You may remember that it gets dark here initially until you unlock the map. We're going to manage to still get one of the terminals and set up several other later terminals while it's dark, just by knowing where things are and by having some visual cues with the Malice goo. So we're going to see Crazy use a precise arrow shot to light that blue flame, and some bomb arrow shots to get rid of some wooden planks that are holding those doors shut, as well as release a metal cube that will be used later. These doors are obnoxious. They can swing closed on you. Sometimes they did for him there. This next shot is kind of cool. Let's see if he gets it. If you line up right, and perfect. If you line up right, you can both shoot that guardian in the eye, which kills it, and the second arrow of the duplex bow hits the torch. It just so happens to line up perfectly like that. And so it's an efficient use of a bow shot. Glan here is going to enter Redania and hope things go as smoothly as they just did for Crazy. Crazy, meanwhile, is going to be doing another trick shot that, to not to spoil all of our secrets, but it's not as precise as it looks. Certainly missable, but it's not crazy precise. It's a bank shot. He's going to shoot high up in the air with a blue flamed arrow and light a torch that will release another one of these Sheikah orbs. Glan, interestingly, choosing to shoot that Malice Eye. I wonder why that is. And instead of using bomb arrows, uses the light from a bomb explosion. Nice shot, Crazy. The bomb explosion both breaks that plank and releases the doors, but it also provides enough illumination to see where he was shooting for that second shot. Here in just a moment, we're going to see Crazy slither through a tiny hole like an octopus. Link apparently has no bones and can just like worm his way through tiny openings. It's got to move the cube out of the way. The cube sometimes is blocking the path and sometimes is not, but that's not even a glitch. That's just like, for some reason, if you crouch, you can just walk right through the hole. Thank you, Nintendo devs. See how Glan's bank shot goes here. Hopefully it goes well for him. As he turns the lights on. 2 terminals left for Crazy. Here's number 1, and then the final one is very quick. Oh, unfortunately, Glan's shot not landing there. He is choosing to shoot an arrow and then light an arrow with that first arrow, which is smart. It gives a bit more time. Interesting. Even though his starting position was wildly different in those 2 arrow shot attempts, gets the second one. So good on him. Crazy heading on to Fireblight here. One interesting thing about the blights is that their health scales. So every divine beast you complete, every blight you defeat, the next blight has more health. So I think the final blight has like 2,000 health, whereas the first blight, which in this route is Wind Blight, of course, only has like 800. So they get slowly more difficult, but with the firepower that we have, it's barely even noticeable, to be honest. Crazy gonna land a couple of bow shots and then jump backwards to get bullet time and finish phase 2 very nicely. Where is the orb? I'm looking over. Oh, Glan must have forgotten to let the orb in? Or maybe he pulled the thing up, but it didn't actually... Oh, okay. Well, I don't know what happened the first time, but what just happened now was the orb was caught in the gale, which is pretty funny. Kind of annoying for him, I'm sure, but it's a funny little quirk. He must either not have lifted up the magnesis block that allows the orb to go through, or maybe didn't lift it up high enough or long enough. But he managed to get that corrected. And activating his final terminal. So heading into Calamity Ganon, it used to be, even, well, until relatively recently, I suppose until IST and the current setup that has all these ancient arrows, there used to be a pretty precise Calamity skip. We sometimes called it a spawn snipe, where we would get into a very specific starting position, preparing to enter Sanctum, and fire an arrow into the cutscene. And let's see, Glan fight Fireblight here. Okay, needing an extra shot there, but no big deal. Fire an arrow into the cutscene and then activate the cutscene. And one of the quirks of this game is that just like your bow can take burn damage during the cutscene, enemies can take damage during cutscenes. So if you can arrange it so that the arrow is inside of the enemy hitbox as it spawns in, the enemy will continuously take damage for the entirety of the cutscene. We used to be able to skip the Calamity fight that way. However, with Great Eagle Bow and unlimited Ancient Arrows, it's equally as fast and much more consistent just to spam him with a bunch of Ancient Arrows for both phases, and then use Furies in phase 2. Pretty cool. So Crazy is just going to mash through these cutscenes. Glan has finished up Fireblight, and we'll be headed this way shortly. So about, I 7 or 8 maybe Geb shots, and as long as the headshots land, then you're in good shape. The durability of the Great Eagle Bow is kind of just enough to get through this fight, as long as you don't waste too many shots later. And Crazy has a tiny bit of health left, and the last Fury will take care of that. Glan going to equip his metal bow. Again, you've got to have that metal bow equipped, otherwise the bow will burn up. Bows have a 30-second burn timer, and the burn timer can be reset by stowing the bow away and then pulling it back out again, but obviously you can't do that when you're in the middle of a BLS. So Crazy here it broke the Great Eagle Bow on purpose, and the reason for that is if you don't menu, there is a series of audio cues that particularly high-level any percent runners use to get the optimal pre-fires on the Dark Beast shots. Breaking the bow is slightly faster than menuing off of it, because even that split second of menuing messes up the audio cues. So Glan arriving at Castle here, meanwhile Crazy getting those first 3. There are 8 total shots that you have to land on Dark Beast. It's very prescribed, very kind of routine. Not a whole lot that can usually go wrong. Glan waiting on the castle or the Sanctum cutscene to load. Load times can be highly variable in this game. So, especially if you're on PB pace, it can be a little bit nerve-wracking. Nice pre-fire, Crazy. It can be a little bit nerve-wracking to kind of wait on that cutscene to load if you're just kind of watching the seconds tick by. One other thing that's kind of interesting is you technically can skip getting the Bow of Light. Ancient Arrows will also damage Dark Beast as long as you hit the spots. So if you're confident in your Geb durability, or you're confident in your ability to hit shots with a shorter range bow, then some runners might choose to not get the Bow of Light and skip that 3-ish second text box. Glan, it looks like, is getting some low durability on his Geb, maybe? Oh, no, maybe that was a different, like a shield badly damaged notification. Oh, no! Alright, GG's Crazy. Crazy's finished. It's a very respectable time. I think pretty close to his PB, actually. GG, buddy. And Glan finishing up Calamity had a little bit of a mishap with that center claw. But on to Dark Beast as well. Crazy, if you want to come in for an interview, we'd love to chat with you. Looks like he's in the waiting room. We'll get to chat with him in a second, and hopefully we'll get Glan in here as well. Not a whole lot really to say about this Dark Beast fight. It's pretty routine. Not a whole lot of variation between different strategies that one might use. Hey, Crazy. GG.
Hello, thank you.
How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. That was a very mixed race. There were some very good things, and there were some really bad things.
Yeah, talk us through what did you feel? What did you feel went the best? Was there a section or a segment that you were particularly pleased with?
Honestly, the beginning and the end.
Okay.
Bombs was rough, but
Yeah.
the rest of my plat was actually quite good.
Sure.
So I was happy with that. I think I set a gold on either mag. Mag was kind of a fake gold because I'm comparing against getting the ruby, but both mag and stasis were really good. The rest
Sure.
of it was strong. And then I also set a bunch of golds to finish off this run. Both my Rudania, Calamity, and Dark Beast splits were all golds. So.
Oh wow,
cool.
that is a strong finish then.
Mm-hmm.
Nicely done. On the flip side, what did you feel less good about? What was rougher for you?
I mean, the absolute worst thing that happened was somehow missing that first terminal in Naboris. And,
Right.
You just have to reload on that, or at least I don't know any backup. And so with IST, that's like a full quit out.
Yep.
GG's, Glan.
GG's, Glan. Wait, is he done yet? On the feed I'm looking at, he's still waiting on his last shot, but he's about there.
Oh, I may be cheating and watching his stream directly.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah. Were you watching his stream and or the restream? I'm curious to see if runners do this.
Yeah, I absolutely watch my competitors' streams.
GG, Glenn.
Yeah, GG's. Pretty sure that's a big PB for them, so that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm seeing looks like a 3+ minute PB. That's a 1:48. That's very solid.
Yeah.
You were not too far off PB, right?
My PB is a 1:42.
Okay.
So I was like 5-ish minutes off or so.
Oh, okay. I was thinking it was a little bit. I'm struggling with my math to deduct from race timing to leaderboard timing.
Oh, good. No, it may still be the third fastest all dungeons run I've ever done. I haven't done this category that much, so.
Yeah. Welcome in, Glan. GG.
Yo, thanks, GG.
That's
GG's on the huge PB.
Yeah, that's a big PB for you, yeah?
3 minutes-ish. Fairly sizable.
Very solid PB.
Feels good to get that in a race setting for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
What's your kind of overall feel? I mean, I know it's a PB. I'm sure there's things that you're happy about and things that you were annoyed with. What do you think went really well for you this run?
Really well. I guess mainly the early game was reasonably strong for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the whole Zora Ruta section was also pretty solid.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back to any big time losses or big mistakes. I can't really think of any huge ones. Your BTBs to Koga were really, really good.
Yeah.
Those can be pretty tricky, but you nailed both of those pretty much as good as they can go. So nice job on that.
Yeah, thanks. I guess kind of probably the worst thing was going to the Gerudo close, missed the super launch and then flailed around for a while, but yeah.
Sure. Yeah, those kind of curved rock ledges can be tricky to get bullet time off of for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess you'd the Yunobo skip, the cave skip, you had to clip in through the back, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, that can be a frustrating one for sure, but you handled that pretty nicely. A really good race. It was pretty close between the two of you for the majority of it. I mean, it was within usually about a minute to a minute and a half most of the time, I would estimate. So it was fun to watch for sure.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, you were definitely keeping me on my toes.
Well, it's got to be nice knowing that you move on regardless, right? And that's
Yeah.
got to make the mentality a little bit easier. I've got to think.
I suppose.
Yeah, I think so.
So I'm curious. Do either of you know who you face next, or is that even established yet? And maybe we have to wait for the group play to finish up before any sort of bracket formulates.
I don't
Yeah,
know if that's known yet.
not sure.
For sure. Crazy, you were doing a different IST setup than what you're accustomed to. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I normally do the one with the DLC Ruby, and I
Right.
kind of played around last night with what the alternatives were for not getting that Ruby. Um,
Mhm.
I had one run, oh, like a couple weeks ago now at this point, where I had just accidentally not picked up the Ruby and had to like completely YOLO something where I tried to use a luminous stone in its place and then make up the rest of the rubies in the Yiga hideout. That was not good. Um, so I ended up basically looking at like what Tapir does because I know he doesn't play with DLC.
Mhm.
And so I liked his because it seemed pretty similar to what I was used to. Um, there's basically just like don't shoot an arrow at one place where I would normally shoot an arrow.
Does it require an extra reload?
No, it's the same number of reloads. The
Interesting.
main difference is you have to go pick up a fresh pot lid because you need the fresh pot lid to give you 900 fairies to sell.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also kind of nice. I would think that it gives you both the regular and the ancient arrows corrupted. Um, I guess that the regular arrows have limited utility, but you don't certainly don't have to worry about running out of those if you struggle with a trick shot or anything like that in Redania.
Yeah, I have definitely run out of those with the trick shot in Redania. I was really happy to hit it first try this time, but yeah, didn't get anywhere near using 4,000 of them.
Yeah. Speaking of Redania, Glenn, you had kind of an interesting thing where the orb for the fourth terminal didn't drop. Did you just
I
forget to mag it down, or did
I
it?
no, I did move the block, but I guess it just didn't fall. I have no idea what happened.
Yeah, I was
Maybe I
watching that and
got
I was
to it too fast, maybe?
yeah, maybe. I was fairly confused trying to figure out where it went, and then I got confused again when the gale was kind of
Yeah.
blowing it up, and I didn't see it. I was like, "Where did it go?" Uh,
Yeah.
but nice
I
recovery there.
yeah, that Redonia was a train wreck. But
I I was kind of curious because I had your stream up and I didn't fully catch what you did, but you did something interesting with the trick shot in Redania. Did you like shoot one arrow first and then light your arrow from that arrow or something like that?
yeah, it's what I do.
Interesting.
Gives you a little more time to aim.
That makes sense. Does it also help you with like your visual cue on where to stand?
Not really.
Okay.
It's that trick shot is funny because I always got the impression it was super precise, but then I see people standing in all kinds of different places, aiming at all kinds of different places, and a lot of different angles seem to work. So it's one of
Yeah,
those things I think
I've
where you just got to
kind of
find out what works for you.
just been YOLOing it, but I don't think I should.
I've
Yeah, I
definitely
don't
had
have
runs
as
where
precise a
like you
setup
just
as I'd like.
yeah, I've definitely had runs where it just you fail it 8 times in a row and you can't figure out what you're doing wrong. It can be
Yeah.
super frustrating right at the end, but oh
Definitely
well.
one of those tricks.
Yeah. Any final thoughts from either of our runners?
Um, not really, I guess.
I really don't
GG
like
again.
Thunderblight.
Yeah,
Uh,
me neither.
Ooh,
yeah,
yeah, you guys both had kind of rough Thunderblights.
Oh yeah, I think for both of us, right? Thunderblight just wanted to insist on throwing out electric balls instead of actually like doing a charge attack, and it
Yeah, I
yeah.
think I just like swung too early, so I didn't get the thing where you break his shield.
Yeah.
Mm,
And then he
Well,
ended up hitting my shield dead on and almost broke it. Probably had like one durability left.
yeah, that was scary. Because I don't know what the backup. I guess there's probably a shield somewhere in Gerudo Town, but that's not a
The
fun finding
the
expedition.
only one I know is like completing the quest and then getting the
Oh, right.
Dawnbreaker or whatever it's called.
Yeah. And crazy, I've never he threw 4 electric ball attacks in a row at you at one point, and I'm not sure I've ever seen 4 in a row. That was crazy.
I have never seen that before, and the reason I even made a mistake in the first place is he threw two, And I
Yeah.
at the very beginning, right? I was expecting him to throw one, and then I like pulled out my weapon to be ready for him to charge, and he threw another, and I fumbled pulling the shield out again. And yeah, and then he threw 4 again. And I was just like, wow, I have never seen him this reluctant to charge.
Yeah. That was pretty wild stuff. But it happens. I've had 3 in a row. I've never had 4 in a row. That was pretty crazy. All right. Well, it was certainly a pleasure to watch and to commentate. Thank you both for good runs, and GG's again to both of you, and especially Glan on your PB. That's awesome. And Star, I think we're pretty well good to go here.
Alrighty, GG's then to Crazy and Glenn. Congrats to Crazy for winning the race, and congrats on the PB Glenn there. Please do give both of our runners a follow here in the links in the chat at CrazyAZ and Glenn. And he also weren't insulted for doing our commentary tonight. That was quite fun. Let's see, coming up ahead on the schedule, we have ourselves a variety of races coming up over the weekend, as is typical for our weekends. We have a couple of weekly races. We have some weekly races. We've got a Zelda Randomizer Max Rider Tournament 2023 Winners Round 2 between Level Legend and Zarnax. 2 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, or today, because it's just turned midnight here on the U.S. East Coast, and maybe, in fact, the first already for some of you in other time zones. 11 newborn here, racing Moonswing 27 in Group A, so go check that out. That'll be on ZSR2. We've also got an archive time randomizer standard tournament match, link to the past randomizer match as well, and then Sunday we'll have more tournament races and more weekly races. We'll need to be had there. So keep an eye out on that, and for all sorts of Zelda action. That shall be it here for us tonight. We're going to go over and say hi to Player 5, who is doing some 90% runs. We'll see how that's going. And thanks for watching all, and have a good night.
Thank you.